Hello friends and welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen. Today we're making garlic parmesan chicken cheese bread. So if you looked at the picture at the beginning of this, what it's going to look like is a lot like a French bread pizza, but it's not. Because basically we are going to use French bread. We're going to use about half of this loaf and slice it down the middle and make two of these breads out of it. But on top of it, you're going to have chicken and cheese and seasonings and butter and olive oil and so many things to make this taste really good. So this is really great if you want it for lunch, dinner, whatever. It just makes a really great meal. And you can slice this into little pieces to where you literally could just eat as much or as little as you want of this. So we're going to take two chicken breasts and we're going to cut all the fat off of it, get the tough spot that's down that one side of the breast off, and make sure that there's nothing in here that we don't want on our bread. So if you see any dark spots, cut them off. Make sure that, be careful about going around it, seeing if you miss anything. Make sure that all of the tough pieces are gone. And we're going to cook these whole. We're not cutting them up like, a lot of people would cut slices to do this. We're going to cook the breast as one whole piece each. So in a large pan, we're putting about 3 to 4 tablespoons of olive oil. And we're going to cook this on medium-high heat. We're trying to get the temperature up maybe to around 350 or so. And we're going to put our chicken breasts in here once it's hot. And then we're going to add seasoning to this because we want to actually get a good coating of seasoning, but the seasoning is going to go down into the pan as well and mix with the olive oil to actually flavor the chicken. So once you've got your chicken in there, we're going to add the first round of seasoning, and we're adding 1/3 teaspoon of salt, 1/3 teaspoon of pepper, and a half a teaspoon of chicken seasoning. And we just want to spread this all over the chicken just to make sure it's really coated from top to bottom all the way around. Now, once you get this in place, we're going to sprinkle some Kingsford seasoning on top of this. Now, I have garlic and herb and Cajun style seasoning. You don't have to use a lot of this. It's just basically a little sprinkle over top of it. It's going to give it so much flavor. And this is one of those things where you can control how much you're getting of the Cajun seasoning. If you don't like garlic, less garlic on it. And once it's on top of there, we're going to cook this. And it's going to be in the pan for at least 8 minutes on the first side of cooking. Then we're going to flip it and cook for another 6 minutes or so on the other side. The whole thing we're going for is to brown the chicken, give it that golden look on it, but also cook it completely through. So if you're unsure of how long to cook a chicken breast, you need to get to 165 degrees internally with a thermometer, so that way it's completely cooked through. But if you're cooking this for around 15 minutes or so like that, you should be fine. Now, as you see, I'm flipping mine for the first time and it's still not cooked completely through, so it still needs more cooking time. Now, once you flip it, you can put some seasoning on the back side. That's your option. You really don't have to do that. It's really up to you. But once your chicken is cooked completely and you're done with this part of the recipe, you can go ahead and let this rest for at least 5 minutes or so. Because one thing, the temperature will go down on chicken. It's easier to cut so you don't burn your fingers. But two, it just needs to rest in its own juices for a while before we actually use it. And it's perfectly fine just to sit it to the side, let it do its thing, and let it cool down before we actually go to cut it. And that's great because we have to work with our loaf of bread at this point. So we're going to take a loaf of French bread, cut it in half. Then we're going to flip it up on its side and cut straight through it to where you have what looks like 2 pieces of French bread pizza about to happen. So slice it through. And then we're going to sit these side by side and add some stuff to it, because we're going to put a surface on this before we even add the chicken cheese or anything else to it. So what we're going to do is take some olive oil, drizzle it over both pieces, and brush it back and forth until we get a really good coating going on this. So you don't need to load it with this. We're just doing this enough to where when we put this under a broiler in a few minutes, it's going to give it a bit of a surface so everything doesn't soak through and it kind of has a crunch to it. Then we're going to brush butter over this. You can put a decent amount of butter on it. Just soften up your butter before you try this, and that way you can spread it back and forth. And then after that, we are going to take about a half a teaspoon of garlic powder and divide it between the two and just sprinkle it over the top of where we just put the butter on. And that way, just make sure you get enough for both of them. And then after we do that, we have about 2 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese, which we're going to add over top of the bread, just like we did the rest of it. And just make sure it's quickly spread all over the place, evened out, and it's all over before we put it on a pan. Because we're going to put this under a broiler. We want to brown this, so that way it has this crunchy top on it before we start adding anything else to it. So go ahead, put it in your broiler, get that on high, and then it'll come back looking something like this. Once you got this done, we're going to shred 8 ounces of mozzarella cheese. And I'm using a block because if you get mozzarella cheese out of the bag, it doesn't always melt well. But if you shred this up, it will. And it'll be that kind of stringy cheese you get off a pizza. So it's wonderful. And it's really great to have because, you know, it works for something like this because it does pull, it does stretch. It kind of gives you that melted thing that sometimes the bag doesn't give you. So go ahead and shred up that whole block of cheese because we're going to use it all. And that's a good thing about it. You don't waste anything with this. And once it's all shredded up, we're going to get ready to assemble our bread because we're going to work with everything that we've done so far, the chicken, the cheese, all of this on top of the bread that we already browned. So once we have it set to the side, we're going to take our chicken breasts and we're going to like cut these up. Now mind you, they are still warm inside. They've just been cooked. So they are going to fall apart a little bit because they are that juicy and well cooked that they will come apart a little bit when you slice them like this. And that's fine because it works like that for this bread. It's just perfect that it falls apart because now you have a lot of this chicken in smaller pieces to cover the bread with as you're using it. So you can't beat that. So go ahead and cut up both of the chicken breasts. Now mind you, as you're looking at this, there's a lot of meat coming from these 2 chicken breasts to go on top of this bread. And that's good because you're going to have it loaded. And that's kind of the goal we're going for here. So go ahead and work your way through this. If you have any really huge hunks of it, you can just go ahead and cut that up anyway, because it's best to get it down to a point where it's manageable and workable to go on top of the bread. Now, once we get this done, we're going to move on to our next step, which we're going to do a lot of assembly here. So put your bread on the pan, set it to the side, and then put a layer of cheese underneath. You don't need a whole lot of cheese under this. We're just doing this as a way to glue the chicken together, basically. So just go ahead and put it on both pieces of your bread. And then after this, we're going to add stuff to it. Now, one thing, when you're putting this all together, if you start stacking this on, if some of your cheese falls to the side or whatever, it doesn't matter. Just pick it up and put it back on. So go ahead and take your chicken and just layer this across. Now it's okay if you do it a little over top of each other, a little piled, because we're trying to fill up both of these pieces of bread. And you know, you use as much as you can. If there is like a couple little pieces of chicken left over at the end, so be it. You got something to snack on. But go ahead and keep loading these until you're completely piled. So, and make sure that you kind of evenly distribute it between the 2 pieces of bread, because you know the other person probably that's eating with you wants as much of this as you do. So go ahead and fill it up. Now, as you can see, the chicken stays on pretty well when you're piling it on top of each other. When you go to put the cheese on top after the chicken's already there, that's when it gets a little dicey at times. But it's fine. Just keep loading it as much as you want to put on there. Because the best thing about this, like I said, once you have these all done at the end, you can literally take your piece and slice it into like 4 or 5 slices and eat it that way. So, once your chicken's all in place, we're going to add cheese to the top of this. I told you it will fall off, and it does. But just keep pulling it up to the top and laying it over, because the heat of the chicken is going to help the cheese start to stick together anyway. And we're just going to do this until we've gotten this completely covered. And it's one of those things where, you know, as you're putting the cheese in there, just try to be kind of fair and even about putting it on both slices kind of evenly. So that way, you know, one slice doesn't have too much, because, you know, who wants to eat something where the other person's got theirs piled high and you got nothing on yours? So even it out. And once this is done, we're going to put this back under the broiler again to let it melt the cheese, but also warm up the chicken again. And once you have it in there, you're going to have to let it sit for a couple minutes for all the cheese to melt down and start to brown. But once you do have it, it looks amazing. And not to mention the fact the taste is just killer on this, because who would have thought something so simple could taste so good? But it's such an amazing thing just to have this for lunch, dinner, whatever. And this is what mine looked like. I served it with fries, and it was such a great thing to eat. And I think you'll like this. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. And if you get a chance, check out the Southern Mountain Kitchen website, where you can get a free recipe, check out the cookbooks available from the Southern Mountain Kitchen, and if you'd like to, you could order a cookbook at a discounted price, cheaper than Amazon, with shipping that is also cheaper than Amazon. So if you get a chance, check it out, and I hope you have a great day.